And now...
What is this?
I know you're gonna dig this.
This is the Flatland Sports Podcast.
Where do you come from? Lubbock, Texas?
Lubbock, Texas.
A place called Lubbock.
I wonder if they think I'm so gorgeous back in Lubbock.
What do you care about Lubbock? You're big time now.
I'm just a little homesick, that's all.
Is that what you want, Larry, to spend the night in Lubbock, Texas at a day's inn with a $15 voucher from Cinnabon?
Lubbock? No, it's near Lubbock.
What's it like there?
It's flat, real flat. You stand on a coffee can, you can see Colorado.
How are you doing from across the Great Plains of West Texas? This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, free and available worldwide on YouTube. There is growing momentum to expand the college football playoff again as early as next season. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk Red Raider and Lady Raider basketball, as well as give a portal update. And we'll have the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first, this episode of the Flatland Sports Podcast is powered by Midwest Helmets, where owner Dallas Thompson turns football art into a full-on experience. If you ever wanted a custom helmet of any team, any design, or a wild idea straight from your imagination, Dallas can make it happen. Want a classic Double T helmet or a Bass Boat glitter shell? Or maybe do you want a classic Double T on a Bass Boat glitter shell? He'll do it. Need a helmet to rep your fantasy football squad? He'll build that too. Whatever you're dreaming up, Dallas brings it to life with incredible attention to detail. These are one-of-a-kind pieces that will level up your office, man cave, studio, anywhere you rep your team. To order, just DM Midwest Helmets on Instagram or hit up their Facebook page. Both are linked in the description. And when you mention Flatland Sports in your message, you'll get 10% off your custom build. Midwest Helmets, custom, bold, and built to stand out. And I'm so excited. I've got mine coming in the mail right now. An old 1970s red face mask, the old classic Double T is going to be sitting right here on the studio table here. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're here right now, like the video, double check that you're subscribed. It's free and it helps the show grow. Lots to get into today. It is being reported in an article by Heather Dinich of ESPN that there is growing support for a 16-team playoff to begin as early as next season. Of course, this report coming from Heather Dinich is significant because she writes for ESPN, who operates the college football. Basically, all of our information comes from inside, and this is probably an intentional leak. You know, you'll see that from time to time as ESPN and other giants will float ideas to the public to gauge interest. We saw that recently when the idea for the 4-4-2-2 format, basically 4 Big 10, 4 SEC, 2 Big 12, 2 ACC teams, was being discussed, and there was overwhelming criticism, enough to that you saw the idea get dropped immediately, despite the conversations being had behind closed doors. Now I'll read some excerpts from Dinich's article. She writes, "There is strong support for a 16-team college football playoff format to begin as soon as 2026 if Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey can reach a specific compromise. Multiple sources with knowledge of the discussions have told ESPN in the days leading up to one of the most significant meetings for the sport's postseason. There's still a stalemate, though, between the two power brokers, meaning that even if a majority are in favor of the change, the playoff could remain at 12 next season." So, for those of you who don't understand or don't know, there's a memorandum of understanding that was signed back in March of 2024 prior to signing the new college football agreement with ESPN. And what it did is it gave the Big Ten and the SEC the bulk of control. Now, at the time, we thought they were just going to be able to bulldoze everyone. It wasn't quite like that. It wasn't all the control, as we saw the Big 12 was successfully able to completely shut down that 4-4-2-2 model that was previously proposed. And there's speculation about how it's set up. I haven't seen any documentation that shows, the actual ins and outs of that memorandum of understanding. What it appears to be is that the Big Ten and the SEC will have final say regardless. However, the Big Ten and the SEC alone can't just overrule the rest of the conference. They can't come up with an idea and just say, all right, y'all have to get in line. Basically, They can't just impose their will on the rest of the conferences if the Big 12, ACC, and Notre Dame oppose. However, they also can't be outvoted. And then the other side of that, too, is if the Big 10, SEC, and say ACC and Notre Dame are in favor of something and the Big 12 and the Group of Five is against it, then the Big 12 and Group of Five are outvoted. It's kind of a wonky system. Basically, the Big 10 and SEC have to both be completely on board before something can get approved. Otherwise, nothing gets approved. And you continue with a stalemate, and you continue with whatever the fallback plan that was previously agreed upon. Continuing with Heather Dinich's article, in November, the deadline for completing the format and related structural decisions moved from December 1st to January 23rd, 2026. CFP leaders, including all 10 FBS commissioners, Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Bavacca, and the 11 presidents and chancellors who comprise the organization's board of managers, will meet January 18th in Miami, the day before the national championship game, for their annual review of the season. They are expected to discuss two models: a 16-team field that includes 5 conference champions and 11 at-large bids, and another format with 24 teams. Now, it's not stated what that 24-team, and this is me talking, it's not stated what that 24-team model would look like. Previously reported was Tony Petitti had proposed a 4-4-4-4-2-6 format. So basically, 4 from each of the Power 4 conferences, 4 from the Big 10, SEC, Big 12, and ACC, 2 group of 6 conference champions, and then 6 at large, which I am fully in favor of this format. Also, the top 8 seeded teams will be getting buys. The goal is essentially to take the committee out of the equation as much as possible. The reporting recently implied that the 2014 format could be that, or it could be something closer to you get 5 conference champion automatic qualifiers plus 19 at large as well, and I would be a fan of that as well. And then, of course, the 16-team format, pretty simple, broken down, 5 plus 11. This is Greg Sankey's preferred format, as it's easier to manipulate the field in the SEC's favor while also keeping a smaller field, which is easier for the SEC to navigate, although as we saw, the 12-team version still not so kind to the SEC. Continuing with Dinich's article, Sankey's support of a 16-team field is extremely significant because of the weight he carries in the room, but it won't happen if Petitti isn't on board. Sources say the Big Ten wants to use this as leverage to eventually lock in a field with at least 24 teams, with or without automatic qualifiers, in exchange for support for a 16-team tournament now. Sources say the Big Ten is looking for a commitment to move to 24 teams after 2 or 3 seasons, though some in the room might be willing to consider a 24-team field halfway through the next 6-year deal. There is a strong reluctance to commit to it now, and that could keep the stalemate ongoing. A 24-team playoff without automatic qualifiers, though, might be appealing enough for Sankey to consider. Some college football leaders have become more open to the idea of a 24-team field. It's not something people vehemently oppose, but there is a sense among many of them that it's too significant of a leap to make at this point. The Big Ten's perspective, according to sources, is that 3 years with 16 teams would give conference commissioners enough time to eliminate their conference championship games and restructure the postseason to accommodate play-in games or whatever path to the playoff they might favor, which really leans more into the idea that it's the original 4x4x4x4 model as opposed to maybe not necessarily just a straight 24-team open committee selection model, which is what they're saying Greg Sankey is in favor of. Now, if you're asking me, I have always been in favor of copying the FCS format and just applying that to the FBS. And the way the FCS does it, 24 teams, 10 conference champions, and you've got the Pac-12 back on its feet now, 14 at large. No deserving team gets left out. The SEC can fix rankings and load up with as many mediocre teams as their hearts desire. It is a win-win with 24 teams, especially if you include all 10 conference champions, which is not going to happen, but maybe the top 5 or top 6 conference champions, with the rest of them being at large, is palatable. Now, Greg Sankey may be pushing back a little bit more with expansion because, as we are seeing play out live, the SEC isn't actually the beatable juggernaut that they claim to be. The conference went 1-8 against Power 4 schools and bowls, the one win coming from Texas against the Michigan team that had recently gutted their program after a scandal involving head coach Sharon Moore and an assistant, and I'll leave it at that. And you can argue the SEC doesn't care about bowl games. They do. Maybe you as a fan don't, but the teams do. The coaches and players still do. The coaches and players still want to win. Coaches still have to answer to their athletic directors and boosters when they lose games to inferior opponents, regardless of what bowl game it's in. And even if it were true, the facts remain, the SEC did not beat anyone in the college football playoff other than themselves and Tulane. Had the SEC not been stacked in one bracket, you very well could have seen all teams beaten in just the first rounds. But they were held back by being in the same bracket. The team that made it through didn't have a head coach and then lost to 10-seeded Miami. Miami from the ACC, who didn't make their conference championship game. And by the way, the ACC conference champion was a 7-5 Duke team. There was absolutely nothing this season that supported the SEC being an elite conference that is worlds above everyone else. And in fact, Miami playing for a national championship on Monday confirms that parity across the board is the name of the game now. And the SEC certainly wasn't deserving of half the field. They got 5 teams into a 12-team playoff. Not a single one of them made it to a national championship game. So 50% of the entire field, almost, closer to 45% of the entire field. And not a single one finds their way to the end. So if anything, this year's college football playoff, coupled with the fact that the SEC hasn't even appeared in the championship game since the beginning of the 12-team playoff, just confirms that it's all an illusion. And Greg Sankey understands that as the playoff expands, it becomes harder and harder for the SEC to be portrayed as dominant, because the fact remains the conferences are relatively equal. There are teams within conferences that periodically go on runs. Ohio State being one of them, Alabama being another one. Georgia went on a run. But the conferences themselves, once you get past that layer, they're all the same. They're all the same. And as we're seeing with Indiana, the blue chip ratio that they brag about, the NFL talent, it doesn't matter. There's not a single 5-star on that Indiana team that is just blowing everyone out right now. And compared to the 14 playoff in the BCS, where the SEC could get by basically on just season propaganda and then winning 1 or 2 games. And even then, even during that period, by the way, a historically mid-tier Clemson program put together a team that won multiple national championships during the peak of Nick Saban's career at Alabama. They didn't get him at the beginning. They didn't get him at the end. Dabo Swinney took a Clemson team that up until that point had been basically a meme for choking and won 2 national championships against the best Alabama teams of all time. So with that in mind, the SEC is not in a hurry to do anything that involves rewarding merits over logos, and Sankey certainly isn't interested in a format that would allow 4 Big 12 and 4 ACC teams, because Sankey, more than anyone, understands how fragile the SEC's hold on the college football world really is. If you allow 1 Big 12 team like you did this year, you've got an 11-12 shot at the team getting beat. And it's easier to push a narrative that the Big 12 is weak that way. Well, they only got 1 team in, and then the team that got in got beat in the first round. You saw that this year. We saw that even when TCU made the national championship game. We saw that last year when Arizona State had Texas on the ropes and got beat by a very questionable targeting call and a miracle 4th and 16 conversion, which credit to Texas on that. That was just a great play. But if you allow 4 Big 12 teams, you're not able to necessarily claim that BYU, Utah, and Houston were all weak and undeserving, especially if 1 or maybe 2 of them go on a run. So Sankey, of course, is pushed back against the 4 + 4 + 4 + 4 model, even though he pushed for the 4 + 4 + 2 + 2. So it's not about having more than everyone else. It's not about the SEC getting the most in as much as it's about making sure everyone else has less. Because if the SEC is really dominant, if the SEC is really the conference that can just go in and destroy everyone, then Greg Sankey would tell you, yeah, let everyone in. We'll beat them. But he's not. It's all an illusion. It's all It's all fake, and it's been that way for 150 years. While everyone has different motivations, it seems like the collective college football world can agree that the current playoff format is heavily flawed and needs to change. Now, what changes does it need to make? Well, if you're asking Sankey, it's the playoff is too inclusive and needs to cater to the best teams rather than the most deserving. And I say best teams with quotes because by best teams, they really just mean their favorite teams with their favorite logos. If you're asking a Big Ten as well as a good portion of the rest of the league, the committee is the problem. You need to take less control from subjective measures and reward merit. And the way you reward merit is by making it about the conference races, selecting the top 4 teams from each conference or the top 2 teams from each conference, or just rewarding conference champions and letting teams play their way in rather than go on a beauty pageant. And the Big Ten especially has been the victim of SEC bias despite being a so-called Power 2. You know, you saw that last year, Kirk Herbstreit giving a whole monologue about how Indiana doesn't deserve to be there against a more deserving 9-3 SEC team, despite the fact that he had just finished, and you could see the Tennessee logo behind him, just finished calling Tennessee's playoff game, which was a blowout loss, I believe, to Ohio State. Indiana has been the most dominant team in the college football playoff this year, despite having 0 5-stars on their roster. The NFL talent blue chip ratio is proving to matter less and less, not because talent doesn't matter, but because the way talent is rated is biased and therefore flawed. You know, from a Texas Tech point of view, you had Felix Ojo, he was a 5-star while Texas was recruiting him, dropped to a 4-star by rivals immediately after committing to Texas Tech. It's all the same with Micah Hudson last year too, and many, many others. Ultimately, the best thing for college football to do is take out as much bias as possible, and either by making it more AQ-based or by expanding the field to make it idiot-proof, or both, which is what that 2014 field is. I've heard people talk against AQs. I've heard it'll become an invitational instead of a playoff. No, that's what it is now. Committee looks at teams and picks the 12 that they like the most, and they invite them over. A college football playoff that's entirely AQ-based, no longer an invitational, because the only teams that get in are teams that actually played their way during the regular season to get a spot. It's completely based on the conference races. There is no subjective committee trying to make a decision here. And that's how it is in every other sports league. That's how it is in the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. And then there's also the question of the group of 5. And Dinch wrote, there are some decision makers, particularly in the SEC, who would support a field that included the 16 best teams without guarantees to conference champions, but also a realization that excluding the group of 5 is a highly unlikely scenario. I don't think that's going to fly, one source said. There also isn't any serious momentum to require conference champions to be ranked within a certain range to qualify for the playoff, a public talking point after number 25, James Madison, entered the field. That qualifier hasn't gained support from the decision makers. Which, listen to that, by the way. We talk about how the Big 10 and the SEC have all the power and can just impose their will on everyone else. And yet, the things that they want to do are being halted by the group of 5. They want the group of 5 completely out of the playoff. Why? Because if you take them out, then it's that much easier to take the Big 12 and ACC out. But they can't. So the little group of 5 still has the ability to force their will upon the Big Ten and SEC. The power that they have, and especially that the SEC has, is an illusion. As we sit right now, it looks like a 16-team 5+11 model will come until a 24-team format is hashed out. I would expect the 24-team format to be just an expanded version of that 5+11 model. I don't think there's a world where Greg Sankey agrees to have the same automatic qualifiers that the Big 12 has, unless we're just going blanket conference champions and a committee. But at 24 teams, I would tell you it's idiot-proof. You're essentially getting everybody who is ranked in the top 25 minus one team, of course, into the playoff. And, at 4 teams, it was really easy to keep the Big 12 at arm's length. At 12 teams, it's really easy to keep the Big 12 at arm's length. As you've seen with BYU multiple years, who's been right at the door and just not even discussed and always ranked at that spot just outside the playoff. the playoff field. Lots of moving parts, though. The committee will meet on January 18th to discuss, and if no agreement is made, they'll just remain at 12 teams, although the difference being, starting next year, they'll move to a model that includes the 4 Power 4 champions and 1 Group of 5 champion, rather than what it is now, which is the top 5 conference champions. So basically, starting next year, what we would have seen is Duke from the ACC getting in the college football playoff over James Madison from the Sun Belt Conference. We'll see what happens. When we return, we'll talk Texas Tech basketball. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast, presented by Midwest Helmets. Texas Tech basketball was in action last Saturday at Colorado. Final score 73-71. Tech had a 16-point lead at halftime, but then Colorado fought back in the second half to make it a 2-point game with seconds left. Fortunately, the Texas Tech defense buckled down and held up to win in the final possession. Donovan Atwell led Tech with 17 points after making 5 3-pointers. JT Toppin recorded his 5th straight double-double with 16 points and 13 rebounds. And Luan Watts continued to step up and play with more consistency. 11 points, 11 rebounds, along with adding 6 assists. Christian Anderson added 15 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals. And Jalen Petty had a career-high 9 rebounds. Free throw consistency was an issue for Texas Tech. Red Raiders went 4 for 10 from the line. Defensively, Texas Tech, continuing to improve, recorded a 46 for 36 rebounding advantage, including grabbing 16 offensive rebounds to Colorado's 7. Texas Tech also recorded 14 points off of turnovers and 11 fast break points. Red Raiders will take on Utah tonight, 8 p.m. at the United Supermarkets Arena. Now, that game will be on Peacock, and Texas Tech a 17.5-point favorite. Moving on now, Lady Raiders keep the streak alive, 19-0 since the last episode. Wins over West Virginia, Cincinnati, and Houston by scores of, and get this, respectively, 71-66 against West Virginia, 71-60 against Cincinnati, and 71-59 against Houston. The epitome of consistency for this Lady Raider offense. Against West Virginia, Bailey Maupin scored a season-high 27 points and a career-high 4 3-pointers. She was shooting 53.3% from the field, 8 for 15, and then 4 for 7 from beyond the arc. She went 7 for 8 from the free throw line and added 4 rebounds and 3 assists and a steal. Just an absolute machine for this Lady Raiders team right now. Snudda Collins posted her 15th double-digit win with 19 points on 50% shooting from the field. And then against Cincinnati, Bailey Maupin posted 17 points after shooting 5 for 10 from the field, 2 for 3 from beyond the arc, and 5 for 6 from the free throw line. Snudda Collins recorded 17 points on the game with 41.7% shooting from the field. And Danae Fritz had a career-high 6 steals. And then against Houston, Maupin totaled 19 points for her team, leading 11 straight double-figure scoring game and was a perfect 6 for 6 from the free throw line. Jalen Bristow tallied 14 points with a team-best 2 3-pointers. She also had 7 rebounds, 5 steals, and 2 blocks. The Lady Raiders forced 27 Houston turnovers while holding the Cougars to 36.7% from the field and 28.6% from beyond the arc. Just 4 for 14 from three-point range. Now, only one of 3 teams that remain undefeated, Vanderbilt and UConn being the other 2. Great company for Texas Tech. And at this point, it's not just a fluke. As you knock on the door of being 20-0, Texas Tech is just rolling through teams right now. This year's roster, the strongest for the Lady Raiders since perhaps maybe the Christy Curry, that 2012 team for Christy Curry, but perhaps really the Marsha Sharp era. And this team may only get stronger as the Lady Raiders are also awaiting confirmation for Stephanie, and excuse me if I mispronounce this, Ochowoku, who is the 7'1" center that the team signed in January. They're working with her to get her on the court and eligible by NCAA standards. It's still early, although not as early as it used to be, but you're now past talking about whether this is a NCAA tournament team. You're now talking about, could this team make the Final Four or beyond? Lady Raiders will take on Kansas State this Saturday at 1 p.m. from the United Supermarkets Arena. Please be there. Pack it. They deserve it. That game will also be on ESPN+. When we return, we'll give an update on the transfer portal. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast presented by Midwest Helmets. Some more moves being made by Joey McGuire, James Blanchard, and company. First, though, we need to acknowledge and talk about Cam Coleman, who committed to Texas over the weekend. Texas Tech had him locked down. You could tell James Blanchard was posting on social media. Joey McGuire, I saw him do his Ric Flair meme. Texas Tech was posting Michael Crabtree highlights. I mean, truly had him down as a lock, had him committed, and he commits to Texas. It's not very often in the recent seasons that Texas Tech truly misses on a player. This was a player that Tech truly just did not land. And a couple things are at play here. Based on my sources, Texas came in at the 11th hour with an NIL offer that I heard was up to $10 million. Reporting has been a little shaky on that. They're playing that one a little close to the chest here. Texas fans are trying to say he took a pay cut to go to Texas. That is completely false. They came in and gave him a bag. The other thing is his agent. His agent is an Austin-based guy. He is a UT alum, and by what I've heard from people in the know, just absolutely hates Texas Tech. Talked him out of going, and also has talked to other potential targets out of going to Texas Tech as well. Agents. Good Lord. Tech also missed out on Coy Perrick, who seemed to be a lock, but then committed to Oregon. Maybe the domino effect after losing out on a guy like Cam Coleman. However, you did get a great defensive tackle in Adam Trick from Miami, Ohio to commit. Trick, one of the top edge defenders in the portal with 59 tackles, 8.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles and an interception last season. You also got a commitment from another Auburn wide receiver, Malcolm Simmons, the number 10 wideout in the portal per on 3. He caught 25 passes for 475 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2025, which doesn't seem like a lot, but he really broke out in the last couple games of the season. These additions propelled Texas Tech to the number 1 rated portal class in the country after kind of dropping a little bit when you lose out on Cam Coleman. And we're still early. This thing is still in its infancy. Texas Tech hosting visits now, and portal season is far from over. I'll keep you posted along the way. When we return, we'll have the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is the Flatland Sports Podcast presented by Midwest Helmets.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Back for one more. This is the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll start with the good.
It's all good, man.
Lady Raiders are still undefeated, 19-0. Best start to a season ever. And the best team since 2013 under Christy Curry. But really, you have to go back to Marsha Sharp to find a team that could even scratch the surface of the level that this team is playing at. Just an incredible season so far for the Lady Raiders. And do we have the conversation that the Seeing Scarlet podcast has been having since last March, which is, is this a Final Four team? Is this a team that you have in the national championship game discussion? I'm starting to believe. Also good.
It's good. It's good.
Brendan Sorsby, the new quarterback for Texas Tech, transferred from Cincinnati. Last week after the win against Cincinnati, Krista Gerlich tweeted out offering Brendan Sorsby a ride from Cincinnati to Lubbock. Brendan said, "Already here, coach. Waiting on y'all to get back so we can come watch a game. #Wreck'em." Now fast forward to last night, and here he is. I love it. True Red Raider right there. Let's do a bad.
Whoa. This is worthless.
Cam Coleman, all but committed. We had Michael Crabtree videos posted. We had Ric Flair. It was a lock, and from what I'm understanding, completely talked out of Texas Tech by his Longhorn alum agent. You know, we talk about the transfer portal ruining college football. We talk about NIL ruining college football. No, agents are ruining college football. But in my opinion, we dodged the bullet here. No way you could ever trust a guy who would willingly decide to go to the University of Texas over Texas Tech. Obviously, not going to be good for the locker room here. We'll do an ugly.
Did he just talk to me like I'm ugly?
My mentions have been filled for days with Texas fans dunking on Texas Tech about signing Cam Coleman. Every time I open my Twitter page, just nonstop comments. And great pickup for Texas. He's going to be a great player. But I just think it's incredible. We live in a time where the University of Texas at Austin and their many, many fans are dancing in the streets about winning a recruiting battle against Texas Tech. But that's not the ugly part. This is the ugly part. Texas Tech sitting at number 1, and there's Texas all the way down there. I'm sorry, Texas. I can't hear you all the way from up here. You're going to have to speak a little bit louder. But that's all I've got for you. Please take a moment, like the video, subscribe. There's people watching the video but not liking and not subscribing. If you're here right now, just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and follow Flatland Sports. That's Flatland_sports on Twitter, or search Flatland Sports on other social media platforms. By the way, national championship game is on Monday. I'm picking Indiana to win that one 34-28 over Miami, and we will have a brand new national champion for the first time since the 1999 Florida Gators. Special thanks to Midwest Helmets. I will be back on Wednesday, a week from today. For Flightland Sports, I am Christopher Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us, and wreck 'em.